So as we all know, HUD and many of its housing programs like Section 8 have recently been under attack by the Trump administration in a way that this country has never seen before. A few months after Trump got in office, Congress fully funded HUD and its programs for the rest of fiscal year 2025. And this happened right after there were mass talks of funding freezes, contract terminations, and the canceling of programs. So this gave a lot of false hope to program participants, thinking they were in the clear of any devastating or impactful changes. Well, the fiscal year ends in September, and for fiscal year 2026, Trump and his buddies have other plans. But this country is somewhat built on checks and balances, and ultimately, Congress plays a huge part in what bills get passed and which bills don't. And we're about to go over just what Trump and his administration is trying to do with HUD and programs like Section 8, what Congress just did in response to Trump's HUD's budget proposal, how all of this mess is currently affecting affordable housing, and exactly what we can expect to happen next. So without further ado, let's get to it. Now, it's no secret by now. Everyone knows what the Trump administration wants to do. They want to cut HUD's funding in half and get rid of federal rental assistance programs like Section 8 and force the states to pick up their own rental assistance programs. Now, mind you, the states trying to run programs that have been federally funded and ran for decades would be a disaster. Most states wouldn't even be able to afford it, but that didn't stop HUD Secretary Scott Turner from going to the House and Senate Appropriations Committee and trying to convince them why cutting HUD's funding and ditching a number of federal housing programs was a good thing.
We've seen that pouring money into programs just fuels its existing status, which is not good. No, here we are, reversing course to be efficient and effective, not bloated and bureaucratic. And when you look at HUD, HUD has had record funding over the past few years. In the last 8 years, HUD's budget went from $42 billion to $77 billion, and yet HUD lost focus of its most basic mission. We are only able currently to serve 1 out of 4 eligible families at HUD, and that's unacceptable when you have a $70 to $77 billion budget. And so this is a paradigm shift.
And this also didn't stop them from telling him how they felt about his budget proposal.
There's absolutely no details. So when you just say refocus and reform, it falls on deaf ears. It doesn't mean anything. You can talk about compassion, but no reform measures are going to be able to allow us to cut HUD by 50% and not have our most vulnerable people, seniors, kids, people with HIV/AIDS on the street. And Mr. Secretary, you have to understand housing is everything. Housing for people with HOPWA is health care. These people will die. There's no way you can believe that a 50% cut won't mean a dramatic increase in people being put on the street.
But nevertheless, no matter how ridiculous the proposal may have sounded, there was still some worry lingering around. Trump still has a lot of Republican support in Congress. The One Big Beautiful Bill was just passed, which some say actually hurts affordable housing and a number of low-income Americans. So after Scott Turner's testimony in front of both committees, it was up to them to draft their own bills. And a couple of weeks ago, the House Appropriations Committee released their approved draft spending bill. And it was drastically different than what the Trump administration was proposing. Their bill proposes to fund HUD $67.8 billion, which is a few $billion less from fiscal year 2025, but $24.3 billion more than how much Trump wanted to fund it. A big takeaway from the bill is HUD's rental assistance, homelessness assistance, and other housing programs would remain federal programs and wouldn't be redesigned, packaged up, and just handed off to the states. Now, since the funding amount is less than the previous years, there will be some spending cuts from key housing programs and a 26% cut in HUD staff, which had previously been implemented by HUD Secretary Scott Turner. And this can cause states and communities to face new barriers, depending on which housing programs face cuts and if certain programs aren't staffed properly. As far as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the House bill proposes a $2 billion increase, which is good news. But it said that it's still short of what's needed to renew existing vouchers in light of rent increases. But it does also include $375 million that can be used to protect existing voucher holders. The bill also provides $4.1 billion for homeless assistance assistance grants, but it doesn't provide funding for supportive housing for veterans. However, the House committee did propose funding a rental assistance program through a new account at the Department of Veteran Affairs instead of HUD, but that will require new authorizing legislation. This bill also will let HUD allow housing authorities to require their own work requirements and implement time limits for those who receive assistance. Now, there are already housing authorities that require work requirements. Not all, but some do. But time limits would definitely have a major impact on the program, specifically if they decided to implement 2-year time limits. Now, I've already addressed how I feel about 2-year time limits. It's not long enough, and it will ruin the program because it'll turn most of the private landlords away. But HUD would be leaving that up to the individual housing authorities to decide what eligibility requirements to implement. And lastly, the House bill would cut $1.5 billion in funding from public housing, and the HOME program, which provide grants to state and local governments to create affordable housing, would receive 0 funding. And again, this is just the House committee's proposed bill, and they're just one half of the Appropriations Committee. So the Senate had to draft up their own bill as well, and just last week they did just that. So the Senate's bill was actually more favorable to HUD and rental assistance programs, and it passed by a landslide vote of 27-1. And it approved $73.3 billion for rental assistance and self-sufficiency support for low-income working families, seniors, disabled, homeless individuals, and support for economic and community development. So their bill was about $6.5 billion more than the House drafted bill. And again, a major highlight is that all the programs that the Trump administration wanted to get rid of and make the responsibility of the states, they're going to remain federal programs and continue to be funded federally like they have been. $37.4 billion will be for tenant-based rental assistance, $8.4 billion will be for the public housing fund, $211 million for self-sufficiency programs, $70 million for the home ownership opportunity program, and the home program, which the House bill didn't even fund, would get $1.2 billion. So even though each committee's drafts are different, overall this is good news for those who rely on housing assistance. However, all of the mess that's been going on definitely is having a negative impact on rental assistance programs like Section 8 and also on the development of affordable housing. I said it before, private landlords are a bit skeptical right now, and 2 of our biggest benefits from renting through Section 8 have been on the chopping block, and that's for developers. The uncertainty alone has caused a number of affordable housing projects to be put on pause. Just the mere thought alone that with the stroke of a pen, your business as a landlord or developer can be greatly impacted for the worse is enough to make you want to rethink some things. But all in all, both appropriation committees are against Trump and his administration's budget proposal and future plans for HUD's programs. But what exactly can we expect next, now that each committee has come up with their own budgets for HUD? So sometime within the next few months, leadership in both the House and the Senate will determine the final number for each appropriations subcommittee. And Congress will have until October 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year, to draft, negotiate, and pass a final spending bill. Hopefully this is something that they can get done smoothly because their numbers didn't really seem to be that far from each other. Now, Republicans do control both the House and the Senate, and the bill would need at least 60 votes to pass the Senate. So in other words, it will need support from the Republicans. Now, if it doesn't pass by October 1st, there's one of 2 options. Congress can enact a continuing resolution, which is a short-term funding patch, or there will be a partial government shutdown, and that's something that we don't want. So everything remains to be seen, but at least the ridiculous budget proposal of slicing HUD's funding and eliminating some of the country's most vital programs and turning them over to the states, both committees seem to be in agreement with. I'll make sure to keep you guys updated on how everything plays out, so make sure you guys like and subscribe, and like always, thanks for watching.